are not small things. These are big deals. The 35% bracket will increase to 39.6. The 33% bracket will increase to 36%. Every one of these, the 10% bracket will increase to 15. And the 25 is going to go to 28. So first of all the marginal tax increases on everybody's income taxes are going to go up if the Congress doesn't take any action. This is 2011. This is 2010 down here. Look at all these taxes. Now, we're having a tax party, aren't we? And it's going to give a tax to our economy. Dividends will no longer be taxed at the capital gains rate for individuals, thereby increasing the double taxation in dividends as much as 164%. Guess what kind of people have these dividends and have money invested in these things? People who own small businesses, of course. And so you're going to tax those people. Guess what's going to happen? They're not going to expand the business. You got it. The personal capital gains tax will increase to 20% and 10% from 15 and 5. And the child tax will decrease. So the standard deduction for couples, all of these things, more and more tax increases if Congress, is that it? Oh, no. No, there are more tax increases too if Congress, 2012, the adoption of a tax credit will decrease from $13,000 to $5,000. The credit for electric drive motorcycles, plug-in electric vehicles will expire. All of these things, tax increases. And so, is this the right direction? No. Of course it's not the right direction. What we're doing is we're doing precisely what you would do if you're trying to crash the economy. Now let's talk a little bit. I don't have charts on this, but I want to talk a little bit about what's happening on the spending side. Is it because there are just so many demands on the federal government that we just have to just keep spending money on all these things? Is it that the federal government is just getting so expensive? Well, let's take a look. If you go back to President Bush, he was criticized for spending, and the Republicans that were with him, myself included, were criticized for spending too much money. And you know what? That criticism was just. We spent too much money. In 2008 was the worst year in terms of Bush spending too much money. He had a deficit that year of about $450 billion. That's too much deficit. As you take a look at that, you say, by golly, I don't know how much $450 billion is. That's a little bit outside of my normal family budget. Well, one way to look at it is as a percent of our overall gross domestic product and the GDP. And that's 3.1%, which is about common for a lot of presidents in various years to have a deficit at about 3% or so. That's not uncommon. And that was his worst year in 2008 under a Pelosi Congress. So the Democrats were running this institution. You had President Bush in the White House. Worst deficit, $350 billion. Well, what happened in 2009? That deficit under President Obama went from 450, went up to 1.4 trillion. That is more than 3 times Bush's worst deficit spending in 2009. And so how does that relate to gross domestic product? Well, instead of 3.1%, it jumps all the way to 9.9% of gross domestic product. That's the highest level of deficit since World War II. And that was 2010. What do you think 2011 is going to be like? Well, you've got it right. 2011 is worse. It takes it over 10% of GDP. And so we're spending tons of money. That's part of the reason for these tax increases. But the tax increases aren't beginning to be able to keep up with our high level of federal spending. And so what you got to the point now is when the federal government spends $1, 41 cents of that dollar that they're spending is borrowed money. It's not the federal dollar. So they spend $1, but 41% of it's borrowed. What would happen? What would happen if the American family ran its budget that way? That you could go out and spend $1.40, but you really didn't have $1. You really only had, 59 cents. I mean, I just can't imagine us putting ourselves into that kind of a situation. So a whole lot of Americans, not necessarily just Republicans, there's a whole lot of Americans saying, this has got to stop. This is not the way to run a company. Yeah, the president said something truthful here. He said something truthful. He said, the true engine of job creation in this country will be Americans' businesses, but government can create the conditions necessary for business to expand and hire workers. What he forgot to add was, governments can also